7 Buddhist Secrets to Live Without Regret and Fear. In the restless pace of modern life, regret and fear have become invisible chains that hold countless people captive. We regret the words we didn't say, the paths we didn't take, and the choices that could have changed everything. We fear the future, loss, failure, and even success. Yet beneath all these mental storms lies a deeper truth that Buddhism has taught for over 500 years. The mind creates its own prison, and liberation begins the moment we see things as they truly are. To live without regret or fear is not to deny pain or uncertainty. It is to transform our relationship with them. Through the Buddhist path, we learn to witness impermanence with calm, to let go of clinging and aversion, and to cultivate awareness so profound that life itself becomes an act of freedom. The Buddha did not promise a life without suffering. He revealed the wisdom to stop creating unnecessary suffering. In this journey, we will explore 7 timeless secrets drawn from Buddhist teachings, each one a doorway to peace beyond fear and clarity beyond regret. These are not abstract ideas, but living principles that can reshape how we think, feel, and move through the world. By integrating them into daily life, we can live each day with acceptance, courage, and presence, free from the shadows of what if and what could have been. Let us begin this inner pilgrimage toward fearless living and deep serenity. The first secret. Accepting impermanence as the foundation of freedom. Everything you love will eventually change, fade, or pass away. This truth, while difficult to face, is the very heart of freedom. Buddhism teaches that anicca, impermanence, is not a curse but a sacred rhythm of existence. It is only by resisting this rhythm that fear and regret take root. When we cling to what is passing, we suffer. When we fight what is unfolding, we become trapped in endless inner conflict. To live without regret, one must first embrace change as the natural flow of life. Regret comes from wishing things could have been different, from holding on to an image of how life should have been. But life is not bound by our expectations. It is bound by impermanence. Every ending gives birth to a new beginning. Every loss opens the space for renewal. To see impermanence clearly is to understand that no joy or sorrow is final. In Buddhist practice, meditation on impermanence is central. Sitting in silence, one observes the breath, the rise and fall, the beginning and ending. Each inhale is a birth, each exhale a death. In this simple rhythm lies the deepest teaching. Nothing lasts, and therefore everything is precious. Fear arises only when we forget this truth, when we attempt to hold the river of life still. When the Buddha spoke of impermanence, he was not inviting despair, but liberation. The truth that all conditioned things are transient allows us to release attachment. We stop trying to own people or moments and instead begin to experience them fully. When we no longer expect permanence, we stop living in fear of loss. Regret dissolves, for we understand that every encounter, every chapter was meant to be exactly as it was, no more, no less. Imagine standing before a sunset. Its beauty pierces your heart precisely because you know it will fade. If it lasted forever, would you still marvel at it? Impermanence gives value to life. It transforms each moment into a miracle that cannot be repeated. Those who live with this awareness stop rushing through their days. They speak truthfully, love deeply, and forgive quickly because they know the fleeting nature of time. To internalize this secret, practice mindful observation of life's transience. Watch the changing of seasons, the wrinkles on your hands, the passing of clouds, the cycle of birth and death in nature. See how everything is constantly transforming, including your own thoughts and emotions. What seemed unbearable yesterday becomes soft today. What frightened you a year ago now seems trivial. Everything changes, always. When impermanence is fully understood, fear loses its power. The future cannot frighten you because you no longer expect it to stay fixed. Regret cannot consume you because you realize that the past was never meant to remain. You learn to live in harmony with change, to flow rather than resist, and in that flow you find peace deeper than understanding. The poet Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Because you are alive, everything is possible." This possibility exists only because of impermanence. If nothing changed, growth would be impossible. If nothing faded, beauty would never be born. To fear change is to fear life itself, but to embrace impermanence is to awaken to the dance of existence, where everything moves, dissolves, and reappears in infinite forms. The wise live not by clinging, but by appreciating. They look at the present moment as a gift that will never return in the same way. They stop postponing peace for tomorrow, stop waiting for perfect conditions, and begin to live here, now, fully. When the heart understands impermanence, it stops demanding permanence. When the mind accepts uncertainty, it stops fearing the unknown. To live without regret, let go of if only. To live without fear, let go of what if. Impermanence washes both away, leaving only this moment, the only place where life truly happens. And in this moment, there is no fear. There is only awareness, breathing, being. If this reflection resonates with you and you seek to continue walking the path of inner freedom and peace, remember to subscribe to our channel, a space where ancient wisdom meets the challenges of modern life, helping you discover the stillness that's always within you. The second secret: letting go of control and trusting the flow of life. From the moment we awaken each morning, the human mind begins its endless attempt to control. We plan, we anticipate, we analyze, and we construct invisible walls of expectations around everything we touch. We imagine that through control we can avoid pain, predict outcomes, and shape reality according to our will. But life, as the Buddha taught, is not something to be controlled. It is something to be understood. To understand life is to realize that it moves according to its own law, an unfolding that cannot be possessed or resisted. The second Buddhist secret to living without regret and fear lies precisely in this understanding, that freedom begins where control ends. The desire to control is rooted in fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of loss, the fear of not being enough. It arises from the illusion of separation, from the belief that we stand apart from the rest of existence. We forget that we are not observers of the river of life. We are the river itself. When we resist its flow, we suffer. When we surrender to it, we discover peace beyond imagination. The Buddha's teachings reveal that true mastery is not about bending the world to our desires, but aligning ourselves with its natural movement. Control is an act of ego. Surrender is an act of wisdom. To live without fear, one must recognize that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the essence of life. Every breath we take is uncertain. We do not control whether the next one will come. We do not control the beating of our hearts or the spinning of the earth beneath our feet. We live in a universe of infinite variables, and yet we spend our days pretending that our small plans can dictate the rhythm of it all. The Buddha called this ignorance, avidya, the blindness that binds us to suffering. When we awaken to the truth of interdependence, we see that everything arises through causes and conditions, many of which lie far beyond our reach. The more we try to control, the more anxious we become. The tighter we hold, the faster life slips through our fingers. Control is an illusion that breeds restlessness, while acceptance opens the door to serenity. To trust the flow of life does not mean to become passive or careless. It means to act with clarity and presence while releasing attachment to outcomes. The great Zen master Shunryu Suzuki once said, "Leave your front door and your back door open. Allow your thoughts to come and go, just don't serve them tea." This is the essence of letting go, to allow everything to arise and pass naturally without interference, without fear. When you stop trying to control life, you begin to see it. You begin to notice how perfectly balanced everything already is. The rain that falls, the wind that moves, the silence between two heartbeats, all of it flows with intelligence far greater than our own. Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises when we fight against the natural order of things. We wish for permanence in a world built on impermanence, for certainty in a universe that is always shifting. But the wise understand that peace does not come from stability, it comes from harmony. The river does not resist the rocks in its path, it flows around them, shaping them over time. To let go of control is to release the mind's obsession with how things should be. Regret is born when we look back and wish we had controlled events differently. Fear is born when we look forward and imagine losing control of what may come. Both are illusions created by the ego, which believes it stands outside of life. But when awareness deepens, you realize that life has always been unfolding through you, not against you. The breath that enters your lungs, the thoughts that arise in your mind, the opportunities and losses, all are expressions of one vast, interconnected flow. In Buddhist meditation, one of the most powerful practices for dissolving the need to control is vipassana, or insight meditation. In this practice, the meditator sits in silence, observing everything that arises, thoughts, sensations, emotions, without resistance or judgment. One watches the itch on the skin, the memory that appears, the sorrow that passes, and learns to let them be. Over time, the practitioner sees that trying to manipulate the mind only strengthens its restlessness. When control is released, a deep stillness emerges, a stillness that is not forced but discovered. This is the peace that the Buddha described as unshakable freedom of heart. Trusting the flow of life also means understanding karma not as punishment or reward, but as the natural unfolding of causes and effects. Every action, thought, and intention carries a vibration that echoes through time. When we act with mindfulness and compassion, the flow of life naturally aligns with harmony, but when we act from fear or attachment, the current becomes turbulent. Yet even turbulence has its purpose. It teaches us where we are still resisting. Nothing in life happens to us. Everything happens through us. The person who hurt you, the job you lost, the opportunity that slipped away. Each event was part of the river guiding you toward awareness. Letting go of control is not weakness. It is the highest form of courage. It is to stand before life naked and unarmed, trusting that even in uncertainty there is intelligence. To the unawakened mind, surrender feels like defeat, but to the awakened heart, surrender is victory. The victory of peace over fear, of trust over tension, of truth over illusion. When we surrender to the flow, life stops being something we must survive and becomes something we can experience. The endless struggle to shape outcomes dissolves into quiet confidence. Decisions are made not from fear, but from intuition. Relationships are no longer driven by the need to control others' emotions, but by compassion and understanding. Work no longer feels like a battle against time, but a contribution to something larger than ourselves. To live in this way is to become like water, flexible, patient, and unstoppable. Water never resists, yet nothing can resist it. It adapts to every form, flows around every obstacle, and still remains itself. This is the way of the wise, soft yet strong, yielding yet powerful. The Buddha often compared enlightenment to a clear lake, undisturbed by the winds of desire and aversion. When you stop trying to control the ripples, the reflection of truth appears naturally. When we let go of control, we also release regret. So much of human sorrow comes from thinking, if only I had done more, if only I had chosen differently. But what if you could see that every choice was exactly what it needed to be for your growth? What if the path you walked, with all its pain and detours, was perfectly designed to awaken you? Regret cannot survive in a mind that trusts the intelligence of life. Each event, no matter how painful, becomes a teacher. Each loss reveals what cannot be lost, your awareness. Likewise, fear begins to fade when you stop demanding certainty. You realize that the future is not yours to command. You can prepare, you can act, but you cannot dictate the outcome. Fear thrives in the illusion that we can control tomorrow. When you stop feeding that illusion, the mind relaxes. You discover that life unfolds just fine without your constant interference. The sun rises without your permission, the heart beats without your command, and miracles unfold in the spaces where control once lived. The great Buddhist teacher Ajahn Chah used to tell his students, "If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll know complete freedom." This is not poetic exaggeration, it is lived truth. Every time you release the need to control, even in the smallest moment, you taste freedom. When you stop trying to control the conversation, peace enters your words. When you stop trying to control someone's perception of you, authenticity replaces anxiety. When you stop trying to control outcomes, gratitude replaces fear. The challenge is that the ego resists letting go because it believes control equals safety. But safety born from control is an illusion that collapses at the first unexpected change. Real safety comes from inner trust, the deep knowing that no matter what happens, you will meet it with awareness and compassion. This trust is not naive. It is rooted in wisdom. You begin to see that you have survived every challenge so far. The universe has carried you through storms you thought would destroy you. Why should it stop now? Buddhism calls this trust faith in the Dharma. Faith not as blind belief, but as direct experience of truth. When you see for yourself that life always continues, that even the hardest moments pass, faith becomes your foundation. You begin to walk through uncertainty with calm eyes and an open heart. Fear may whisper, but it no longer controls you. Regret may appear, but it no longer defines you. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice. Each day offers opportunities to release. When traffic slows you down, when someone disappoints you, when plans fall apart, every moment asks, "Can you trust life here too?" And the more you say yes, the lighter you become. Control is heavy. It fills your mind with plans and worries. Surrender is light. It frees your energy to live. When you stop forcing outcomes, you begin to flow with the universe instead of against it. And in that flow, synchronicities appear. You meet the right people at the right time, doors open effortlessly, and solutions reveal themselves without struggle. This is not magic, it is alignment. Life responds to openness the way wind fills the sails of a ship. When you drop resistance, you move naturally toward harmony. And perhaps the most beautiful truth of all is that when you trust the flow of life, you no longer fear death. You understand that even death is part of the great current, a continuation rather than an end. The same force that gives birth also receives us when we leave. To fear death is to fear the river returning to the sea. But when you have lived by trusting the flow, death loses its power to terrify. You see it as another movement in the dance of existence, another transformation guided by the same intelligence that has always carried you. The mind will continue to whisper that control equals security, but the heart knows otherwise. True peace comes not from controlling life, but from aligning with it. When storms come, you no longer curse the rain, you open your hands and feel it. When losses arrive, you no longer resist, you bow to their wisdom. You realize that nothing is ever truly taken from you because nothing was ever truly yours to keep. To let go of control is to step into the mystery of life. to allow each moment to unfold in its natural rhythm. It is to replace resistance with reverence, fear with faith, and tension with trust. This is the second secret to living without regret or fear, to release the illusion of control and surrender to the eternal flow. In that surrender, you find not weakness, but unimaginable strength, not chaos, but harmony, not emptiness, but peace. If this truth speaks to your heart and you wish to continue deepening your understanding of Buddhist wisdom, we invite you to subscribe to our channel, a sanctuary for reflection, awareness, and transformation. Here together, we continue exploring the art of letting go, trusting and awakening to the profound peace that life has always been offering you. The third secret, the power of mindfulness, living fully in the present moment. The third secret to living without regret and fear lies in one of the most profound and practical teachings of Buddhism, mindfulness, or sati. It is through mindfulness that the mind awakens from its dream of past and future and returns home to the only reality that truly exists, the present moment. Every act of fear, every shadow of regret arises because the mind has wandered away from the now. We regret the past because we are living in memory, and we fear the future because we are living in imagination. But the present moment, pure and simple, holds neither regret nor fear. It holds only life. To live mindfully is to wake up from the trance of distraction that dominates modern life. Most people are not truly living. They are remembering or anticipating. They move through their days lost in thought, reacting automatically, repeating the same mental patterns again and again. The Buddha described this state as moha, delusion, a fog that prevents us from seeing reality as it is. The practice of mindfulness is the clearing of that fog. It is the simple but radical act of being present, aware of what is happening right now, without judgment or resistance. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." This is not a metaphor, it is an observation. The quality of your thoughts shapes the quality of your life. A mind scattered across time creates suffering. A mind anchored in the now becomes luminous. Mindfulness trains the mind to stay awake within each moment, to observe without clinging or rejecting, to respond rather than react. In doing so, it transforms ordinary experience into sacred ground. Mindfulness begins with awareness of the body and breath. The breath is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between body and mind. It is always here, always now. By following the breath, you anchor yourself in the present. You notice its rhythm, its texture, its temperature. You feel the expansion and contraction of the lungs, the rise and fall of the chest. And as your awareness deepens, you begin to notice thoughts arising and dissolving, emotions passing like clouds across the sky. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions. You are the awareness that observes them. This simple shift in perspective changes everything. When a painful memory arises, mindfulness allows you to see it as an event in consciousness, not as your identity. You learn to say, "A thought of regret is arising," instead of, "I am filled with regret." The difference is subtle but profound. The first creates distance, the second creates identification. Similarly, when anxiety about the future appears, you recognize it as just another wave in the ocean of the mind. You no longer drown in it. You watch it come. You watch it go. Through mindfulness, you discover that every mental storm eventually dissolves when you stop feeding it with attention. Regret cannot survive in the light of awareness, because awareness does not look backward, it looks inward. It sees that the past, no matter how heavy, exists only as memory. The past is not happening now. It is being replayed by the mind. The same is true of fear. The future is not happening now, it is being imagined. The mind, when unconscious, mistakes these shadows for reality. Mindfulness dispels this confusion by bringing you back to the immediacy of the present, where life is happening fresh, raw, and real. The Buddha once compared mindfulness to a lamp carried into a dark room. The moment light enters, darkness disappears. In the same way, when awareness enters the present moment, confusion and fear dissolve. You begin to experience the miracle of being alive without needing to control or fix anything. You simply are. You feel the aliveness in your breath, the texture of sound around you, the beating of your heart. This is not philosophy, it is direct experience, the essence of Buddhist practice. Living mindfully also reveals the impermanence of all experiences. Every sensation, thought, and emotion arises, stays for a while, and passes away. When you truly see this, you stop clinging to pleasant experiences and stop fearing unpleasant ones. You understand that everything is transient, and therefore everything can be met with equanimity. This understanding frees you from the tyranny of reaction. Instead of being pulled by pleasure and pushed by pain, you rest in awareness, balanced and at peace. Mindfulness transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Walking becomes prayer, listening becomes communion. Every act done with awareness becomes sacred because it is done with full presence. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught, when you wash the dishes, wash the dishes. It sounds simple, yet most of us are never truly where we are. We wash dishes while thinking of tomorrow's problems, eat while watching screens, and talk while mentally rehearsing our responses. We live in fragments, and those fragments accumulate into a life half-lived. Mindfulness gathers the fragments and makes you whole again. In relationships, mindfulness replaces reactivity with compassion. When someone speaks harshly, awareness allows you to notice your impulse to react before it takes control. You pause, breathe, and respond from wisdom instead of habit. You recognize that the other person's anger is their suffering, not an attack on your worth. This is how mindfulness becomes love in action. It allows you to see clearly and act kindly. Without mindfulness, communication becomes a battlefield of egos. With mindfulness, it becomes an exchange of hearts. Mindfulness also dissolves the illusion of self, the source of much fear and regret. When you observe your mind carefully, you begin to notice that you are not a fixed entity, but a stream of changing experiences. Thoughts, sensations, feelings, all arise and pass without a permanent self behind them. The Buddha called this insight anatta, non-self. To realize non-self is to see that there is nothing solid to defend or lose. Fear loses its root when there is no self to be threatened. Regret loses its grip when there is no self that could have done otherwise. Life becomes a flow of causes and conditions, unfolding perfectly according to its nature. Yet mindfulness is not detachment in the cold sense. It is intimacy with reality. When you are mindful, you do not escape life. You enter it fully. You taste food more deeply, feel emotions more vividly, listen more completely. You stop skimming the surface and begin diving into the depth of every experience. This depth brings gratitude. You realize that every breath, every sight, every sound is a gift. Even pain becomes a teacher, showing you the impermanence of all things and the resilience of the human heart. Fear fades when you stop projecting the future. When you are truly present, fear cannot exist. Because fear lives in anticipation of what might happen, not in what is happening. When you feel fear and look at it mindfully, you notice that it is not an enemy, but energy. It rises, peaks, and fades. You breathe into it and allow it to pass. You learn to coexist with uncertainty, to relax into not knowing. This is the freedom that mindfulness offers, the ability to face life without needing to escape or control it. The Buddha's last words were, "All things are impermanent. Strive on, with mindfulness. He knew that mindfulness is both the path and the goal. It is the practice that transforms confusion into clarity, fear into understanding, and regret into compassion. It is not about attaining something new. It is about remembering what is always here. The present moment has always been available. We have simply been elsewhere. In a world addicted to distraction, mindfulness is rebellion. It is a radical act to pause and breathe, to feel rather than flee, to listen rather than react. When you stop running, you discover that peace was never lost. It was just buried under noise. Each time you return to the breath, you return home. The practice of mindfulness also heals the body. Science now confirms what the Buddha taught millennia ago, that awareness affects the nervous system, lowers stress, and increases well-being. When the mind calms, the body follows. The constant adrenaline of fight or flight begins to dissolve. You sleep better, digest better, and think more clearly. The body and mind are not separate. Mindfulness restores their harmony. One of the greatest illusions of the unawakened mind is the belief that happiness lies elsewhere, in the next moment, the next goal, the next achievement. But mindfulness reveals that happiness is not a destination, it is a state of being present. When you are here, fully here, nothing is missing. Regret is gone because you are not living in the past. Fear is gone because you are not projecting the future. You are simply alive, breathing, aware. To cultivate mindfulness, begin with simple practices. When you wake up, take a few deep breaths before touching your phone. Feel your feet on the ground. As you walk, notice each step. As you eat, chew slowly, tasting each bite as if it were your first and last. When you speak, be aware of your words. When you listen, listen without the need to respond. In every moment, return to presence. You will find that life, in its simplicity, is profoundly beautiful. Even in pain, mindfulness brings grace. When suffering arises, instead of saying, "This should not be happening," you say, "This is what is happening." Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means clarity. It means you see reality without distortion. From that clarity, wise action becomes possible. You stop adding layers of resistance and story to your pain. You stop suffering over suffering. This is the difference between pain, which is inevitable, and suffering, which is optional. Mindfulness is the art of allowing. It teaches you to allow thoughts, sensations, and events to come and go without clinging or pushing away. This openness creates a spacious mind, a mind that can hold joy and sorrow, certainty and doubt, success and failure without breaking. The more spacious your awareness, the less power fear and regret have over you. They may still arise, but they pass through like wind through an open window. To live mindfully is to live fully. You begin to experience moments not as stepping stones to something else, but as life itself. Drinking tea is not preparation for meditation, it is meditation. Talking to a friend is not a break from awareness. It is awareness expressing itself. There is no division between the sacred and the mundane when you are present. Everything becomes sacred because everything is seen clearly. As mindfulness deepens, you begin to notice that peace is not something you create, it is something you uncover. It has been here all along, beneath the noise of thought. When the mind stops chasing past and future, peace reveals itself like the moon appearing from behind clouds. You realize that peace is not found in controlling circumstances, but in meeting each moment as it is. The more you practice mindfulness, the less you depend on external conditions for happiness. You no longer need people to behave a certain way or life to go according to plan. You discover that peace comes from within, from awareness itself. This inner stability makes you fearless. The storms of life still come, but they no longer uproot you. You stand firm, like a mountain observing the clouds. And when regret visits you, as it sometimes will, you meet it with mindfulness. You observe the pain of if only with compassion, knowing it is a thought, not truth. You breathe with it, you let it pass. You learn from it without being defined by it. Likewise, when fear arises, you welcome it like an old friend. You say, "I see you," and the moment you see it, it begins to dissolve. Because fear thrives in the dark, awareness is light. In time, mindfulness becomes effortless. It ceases to be a practice and becomes your natural way of being. You live in a continuous state of presence, aware of the flow of life, moment by moment. Even in chaos, you remain calm. Even in sorrow, you remain open. You realize that awareness is the only constant, the silent witness behind all change. And in that realization, you find freedom beyond description. To live without regret and fear is to live with mindfulness. It is to see clearly, to act wisely, and to rest in the eternal now. The Buddha's teaching is simple but transformative. When you are mindful, you are free. If these words have touched your heart and you wish to continue walking the path of awareness and inner peace, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Join a community dedicated to deep reflection and awakening, where together we rediscover what it truly means to be alive, fully, fearlessly and mindfully. The fourth secret: compassion as the antidote to fear and regret. Compassion is the beating heart of Buddhism. It is not merely an emotion or a moral virtue, it is the very expression of awakening. When the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, his first impulse was not to escape into solitude, but to share his insight with others. Why? Because wisdom and compassion are two wings of the same bird. Without one, the other cannot fly. The fourth secret to living without regret and fear lies in this union. Compassion is the great dissolver of boundaries, the medicine that heals the wound of separation, the force that transforms suffering into understanding. Through compassion, we transcend fear, and through love, we are released from regret. In the human heart, fear and compassion cannot coexist for long. Fear contracts, compassion expands. Fear isolates, compassion connects. Fear whispers, "Protect yourself," while compassion says, "We are one." The more you open your heart to others, the less space remains for fear to dwell. The Buddha called this boundless compassion karuna, the capacity to feel another's pain as your own without being consumed by it. It arises naturally when the illusion of separateness fades, and we see that all beings are threads in the same fabric of existence. Regret, too, is transformed through compassion. Often we carry guilt for our past actions, replaying scenes again and again, wishing we had been wiser or kinder. But compassion allows you to look at your past self with gentleness instead of judgment. You begin to see that every mistake was made out of ignorance, not malice. You were doing the best you could with the understanding you had at the time. To hold yourself in compassion is to forgive the child who stumbled in the dark. It is to recognize that suffering was your teacher, and that even pain served a sacred purpose in awakening your heart. In Buddhist practice, compassion is cultivated through metta bhavana, the meditation of loving kindness. One begins by sending thoughts of goodwill to oneself. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. Then this wish expands outward, to loved ones, to neutral people, to those with whom we have conflict, and eventually to all beings. This practice is not sentimental, it is transformative. It reshapes the very structure of the mind, replacing habitual hostility with tenderness, indifference with empathy. Over time, it dissolves the false distinction between self and other. You begin to realize that to harm another is to harm yourself, and to love another is to heal yourself. Fear begins to lose its foundation when you recognize this unity. Much of human fear arises from the illusion of isolation, from believing that we are alone in a hostile world, that life is a competition of survival. But when compassion awakens, the world transforms. Strangers become reflections of your own being, nature becomes an extension of your breath, and existence reveals itself as interconnected harmony. You no longer live in defense against the world, but in cooperation with it. The more you love, the safer you feel. Not because life becomes predictable, but because your heart expands enough to hold all uncertainty without breaking. Compassion is not weakness, as the unawakened mind believes. It is strength of the highest order, the courage to remain open in a world that wounds. To close your heart is easy. To keep it open amid pain requires immense power. The Buddha's compassion was not passive pity, but active understanding. When he saw suffering, he did not turn away, nor did he drown in despair. He met it with presence. This is true compassion, not to rescue or control, but to see clearly, to listen deeply, to respond wisely. When you practice this kind of compassion, you become an oasis of calm in the chaos of the world. The fear of suffering diminishes when compassion grows. Normally, when we see someone in pain, our instinct is to look away because their suffering reminds us of our own vulnerability. But when compassion awakens, we no longer fear suffering. We understand it. We see that it is part of the human condition, and that through understanding it, we become more alive. Compassion transforms pain into connection, sorrow into solidarity. Instead of running from suffering, we hold it in awareness, and through that act, suffering begins to lose its power to frighten us. The practice of compassion begins with the self. Many people misunderstand this, thinking compassion is only about helping others. But if you have no compassion for yourself, your love for others will be incomplete, conditional, and exhausting. Self-compassion means acknowledging your own suffering without shame, treating yourself as you would treat a dear friend. It means saying, I see that you are hurting, and it's okay to rest. It is not self-indulgence, it is self-respect. When you learn to extend warmth inward, that warmth naturally radiates outward. The boundary between giving and receiving dissolves. Regret is healed at its root through self-compassion. So many carry invisible burdens, words spoken in anger, relationships lost, opportunities missed. But when you look at your past self with compassionate eyes, you see innocence behind the ignorance. You begin to understand that everything that happened shaped your awakening. Without darkness, you would not recognize light. Compassion allows you to bless your past instead of curse it, to see that even mistakes were stepping stones toward understanding. When you forgive yourself, you open space for life to move again. Regret becomes gratitude. In moments of fear, compassion becomes your refuge. When anxiety arises, instead of judging yourself for being afraid, you turn toward the fear gently, as a mother comforts a crying child. You breathe into it, saying, "It's okay to feel this." You do not push the fear away or try to rationalize it. You embrace it, and slowly the fear softens, because what it truly needed was understanding. The Buddha often compared compassion to a mother's love, the kind that holds without condition, without expectation. This inner mother lives within us all. When awakened, it can hold any fear, any pain, and transform it through warmth. Compassion also dissolves comparison. We fear inadequacy because we compare our lives to others. We regret because we measure ourselves against imagined standards. But compassion sees beyond competition. It recognizes that each being walks a unique path shaped by countless causes. To envy or judge is to misunderstand the vastness of life's design. Compassion replaces comparison with connection. You no longer wish to be better than others. You wish for all to awaken, all to be free. In this wish, the heart finds peace beyond measure. The Bodhisattva ideal in Mahayana Buddhism embodies this truth. A bodhisattva is one who vows to awaken not only for personal liberation, but for the liberation of all beings. This vow is the highest form of compassion, a recognition that individual enlightenment is incomplete without collective awakening. The bodhisattva walks through the world with eyes open to suffering, but a heart unshaken by it. They do not flee the world's pain, they transform it through love. When you cultivate this spirit, fear vanishes, because your life is no longer centered on self-preservation. It is dedicated to service. The more you give, the more boundless you become. Compassion also teaches us the art of listening. To listen deeply to another person is to enter their world without agenda, to suspend judgment and simply be present. In such presence, healing occurs naturally. So much suffering in the world comes from not being seen or heard. When you listen compassionately, you become a mirror in which others rediscover their own light. This kind of listening is meditation in action. It silences the ego and opens the heart. The more you listen, the less you fear others, because you begin to recognize yourself in their stories. When compassion fills your being, even adversity becomes sacred. The challenges that once made you bitter become opportunities to deepen empathy. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can this teach me about love?" This shift transforms life into continuous growth. Every difficulty becomes a classroom where compassion expands. Fear cannot thrive in a mind that sees purpose in pain. Regret cannot survive in a heart that sees learning in every loss. Compassion is also the bridge between mindfulness and wisdom. Mindfulness allows you to see suffering clearly. Compassion motivates you to respond wisely. Without compassion, mindfulness could become detached observation. Without mindfulness, compassion could become emotional overwhelm. Together, they form the complete path, seeing clearly and responding with love. When you meet fear mindfully and hold it compassionately, it dissolves like salt in water. Even on a global level, compassion is the cure for collective fear. Our world trembles under divisions, nations against nations, ideologies against ideologies, hearts closed by suspicion. Yet every act of kindness ripples outward in ways unseen. The Buddha taught that even a single moment of genuine compassion outweighs a lifetime of self-centeredness. To live without fear is to recognize that love is stronger than hatred, that understanding is deeper than judgment, that unity is our true nature. When compassion guides your actions, you become an instrument of peace in a fearful world. The practice of compassion also requires patience. The heart opens gradually, like a lotus blooming under sunlight. Some days you will feel loving toward all beings. Other days you may struggle even to forgive yourself. Both are part of the journey. The important thing is to keep returning to the intention of kindness. Each time you choose compassion over anger, understanding over blame, you strengthen the muscle of the heart. Over time, compassion ceases to be a practice and becomes your natural state. One of the most beautiful effects of compassion is the disappearance of existential fear, the fear of death itself. When you live with love, death loses its sting. You understand that life and death are not opposites, but companions in the eternal cycle of existence. Compassion reveals that consciousness is continuous, that love cannot be destroyed because it was never born. Those who live compassionately die peacefully, without regret, because they have given fully. They know that their love lives on in every being it has touched. To embody compassion is to walk through life with an open heart, to meet every being as yourself. It means forgiving even when it is hard, understanding even when it is painful, and loving even when there is no guarantee of return. It means living in such a way that at the end of your days there is no regret, because you gave everything, because you withheld nothing. The one who has loved deeply fears nothing, for they have already merged with the infinite. And so, the fourth Buddhist secret to living without regret and fear is compassion, the realization that love is not an act, but a state of being. Not something we give, but something we are. Compassion is the end of loneliness, the end of resistance, the end of fear. It is the light that reveals that in helping others, we are helping ourselves, and in forgiving ourselves, we are forgiving the world. If these words resonate with the deepest part of your heart, and if you wish to continue awakening the spirit of compassion in your life, remember to subscribe to our channel. Join a community where wisdom and kindness meet, where we learn to live, love, and let go together, fearlessly and without regret. The fifth secret, surrendering to the nature of reality. Finding peace in what is there comes a moment in every seeker's journey when effort itself becomes a barrier. We study, we meditate, we reflect, we strive to change, to improve, to become wiser and freer. Yet beneath all that movement lies a subtle resistance to what already is. The mind, restless and unsatisfied, still clings to its ideas of how life should unfold. It wants a guarantee, a direction, an assurance that peace will come as a reward for its labor. But peace does not arrive as an achievement. It reveals itself when the struggle ends. The fifth Buddhist secret to living without regret or fear is surrender, the deep acceptance of reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. It is the final letting go, the turning of the heart from resistance to reverence, from control to trust, from becoming to simply being. Surrender in Buddhism does not mean defeat. It is not the resignation of the powerless, but the awakening of the wise. It is to lay down the burden of trying to rearrange the universe and finally rest in harmony with its flow. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from life itself, but from the mind's refusal to accept life's nature. Things change, yet we demand they stay the same. People come and go, yet we cling to permanence. Events unfold according to causes and conditions, yet we take them personally, as if the cosmos were conspiring against our plans. Surrender is the moment we stop fighting this dance. It is the moment we bow before the vastness of existence and say, yes, this too belongs. To surrender is to see that reality has never been your enemy. The storms that shake you, the losses that pierce you, the silences that confuse you, all are part of the same great intelligence that spins the planets and gives birth to stars. Life does not need your permission to unfold. It simply unfolds. And within that unfolding, there is a mysterious order, a subtle perfection invisible to the grasping mind. Fear arises when we forget this order, when we mistake the unknown for chaos. Regret arises when we think we could have controlled what was never ours to control. But the one who surrenders learns to trust that even the pain has purpose, that even the darkness holds light in disguise. This surrender is not a single act, but a continuous practice of release. Each day life will present you with moments that challenge your preferences, plans that fail, people who disappoint, emotions that unsettle. Each of these is an invitation to surrender again. The ego resists, the heart softens, and the soul expands. Through repeated surrender, the tight fist of control opens into the palm of acceptance, and in that open palm, peace rests naturally. Consider how nature lives in effortless surrender. The tree does not argue with the wind, it bends. The river does not resist the mountain, it carves its path around it. The clouds do not cling to the sky, they drift and transform. In this quiet obedience to the laws of existence lies an unshakable grace. Human beings, however, have forgotten how to flow. We live with clenched minds, demanding that life follow our script, and so we suffer. But when we learn again to live like the river, bending without breaking, moving without forcing, we rediscover the ancient rhythm of harmony. Surrender begins with awareness. You cannot let go of what you do not see. When tension arises, observe it. When fear tightens your chest, breathe into it. Ask yourself, what am I resisting right now? Usually it is not the event itself, but your interpretation of it. You are not suffering because it rains. You are suffering because you wanted sunshine. You are not suffering because a door closed. You are suffering because you believed it should have stayed open. The moment you stop arguing with reality, suffering loses its ground. Acceptance is not passivity, it is clarity. It allows you to see life as it is, not through the lens of should and should not. And to live without regret is to live in this acceptance. Regret says, it should have been different. Acceptance says, it was as it was. Regret freezes you in the past, replaying what cannot be changed. Acceptance frees you to move forward with wisdom. Every moment, no matter how painful, contains a lesson written in invisible ink. You must stop resisting long enough to read it. The person who betrayed you taught you discernment. The failure that broke you taught you humility. The illness that frightened you taught you impermanence. When you see these lessons, regret turns to gratitude. The story of your life ceases to be a list of wrong turns and becomes a sacred path of awakening. Likewise, to live without fear is to surrender the future. Fear says, "What if things don't go my way?" Surrender says, "Whatever comes, I will meet it." The mind believes it needs certainty to feel safe, but safety is an illusion in a world built on impermanence. No plan can protect you from change, no precaution can guarantee tomorrow. But peace arises when you stop demanding certainty and begin to trust your capacity to respond to whatever life brings. The surrendered heart does not rely on the stability of circumstances, it relies on the stability of awareness. It knows that even when everything falls apart, something remains untouched, the silent witness behind all experience. The Buddha called this refuge Nibbana, the unconditioned. It is not a place, but a realization, the recognition that beneath the ever-changing forms of life, there is an unchanging awareness. When you identify with the forms, your body, your thoughts, your possessions, you live in fear of their loss. But when you rest in awareness itself, you see that nothing real can be lost. This is the essence of surrender. The recognition that you are not the waves, but the ocean. The waves rise and fall, but the ocean remains. When you remember this, fear dissolves like mist under sunlight. Surrender also means releasing the idea of a separate self who is in charge of everything. The ego is a storyteller, constantly narrating my life, my success, my failure. It claims ownership of every event and then suffers under the weight of that ownership. But look closely and you will see that life has always been moving through you, not by you. You did not choose to be born, to breathe, to feel. You do not make your heart beat or the earth spin. Everything is happening by itself, guided by countless causes beyond your control. When you truly see this, the illusion of control fades, and with it, the fear of losing control. This does not mean you become passive or careless. True surrender is active participation without attachment. You still act, love, and create, but with lightness. You give your best and release the rest. You plant the seed, but let the rain and sun decide the harvest. You no longer measure life by results, but by presence. Each action becomes an offering, not a transaction. You live not to achieve, but to express. This is what the Buddha meant by right effort. Effort without strain, purpose without possession. Through surrender, compassion deepens. You begin to see that everyone is struggling in their own way to accept life's unfolding. The person who hurts you is resisting their own pain. The one who judges you is frightened of their own reflection. Understanding this, you stop taking things personally. You forgive more easily, because you realize that everyone is learning to surrender, just like you. Even those who seem hardened or cruel are fighting invisible battles with impermanence. When you see this, your heart softens, and you live in harmony even with those who oppose you. The more you surrender, the simpler life becomes. Decisions once clouded by doubt begin to feel natural, as if guided by an inner compass. This is not magic, it is alignment. When you stop resisting reality, your actions harmonize with it. Opportunities flow effortlessly, relationships evolve naturally, and even challenges arrive as teachers. Life no longer feels like a battle to win, but a mystery to live. You realize that surrender is not the end of control, but the beginning of cooperation with the universe. Yet surrender is often misunderstood as giving up desire. Buddhism does not ask you to suppress desire, but to understand it. The problem is not desire itself, but attachment, the belief that your happiness depends on the fulfillment of desire. When you surrender attachment, desire becomes creative energy. You still wish, but without demand. You still dream, but without desperation. You understand that the joy lies not in getting what you want, but in being fully alive in the pursuit. If things turn out differently, you bow to what is and continue walking. The great paradox of surrender is that by giving up control, you gain true power, the power of peace, resilience, and clarity. When you stop fighting what is, your energy stops fragmenting. It gathers in the present where it can be used wisely. You respond instead of reacting. You listen instead of arguing with life. You move with grace instead of force. Fear cannot touch a person rooted in surrender because nothing can be taken from them. Regret cannot follow them because they no longer divide their life into should have and should not. Everything simply is, and that is enough. Surrender also frees you from the tyranny of time. Regret binds you to the past, fear binds you to the future, but surrender returns you to eternity, the timeless now. When you stop resisting, time loses its grip, moments expand, and you experience life directly, not through memory or anticipation. This is what the Zen masters mean when they speak of suchness, the pure being of this moment, free from interpretation. To live in suchness is to live as existence itself, beyond birth and death, beyond hope and fear. You begin to notice that even pain changes flavor when met with surrender. Physical discomfort may still arise, but without resistance, it loses its psychological sting. Emotional pain may still visit, but without storytelling, it passes swiftly. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He offered a way to stop suffering over it. Surrender is that way. It transforms "why me" into "thank you for this lesson." It turns "I can't handle this" into "I am learning from this." Through surrender, pain becomes sacred because it strips away illusion and brings you closer to truth. The ultimate surrender is to death, not the act of dying, but the acceptance that death is not an interruption of life, but its completion. Those who fear death have not yet surrendered to life. They are still holding on, still hoping for permanence. But the wise understand that life and death are two movements of the same song. Every breath contains both, a birth on the inhale, a death on the exhale. When you live in surrender, you stop clinging to either. You breathe fully, live fully, and when the final breath comes, you exhale without resistance, merging back into the mystery. Surrender is not something to attain. It is something to remember. The child you once were lived in, surrender naturally, laughing, crying, exploring without calculation. The child did not regret the past or fear the future. Only later did conditioning teach you to fight with life. But deep within, that innocence remains untouched. When you surrender, you return to that innocence, not as ignorance, but as wisdom. You rediscover the simplicity of being, the joy of existence without agenda. Living in surrender does not mean life becomes free of challenges. It means challenges no longer define you. You may still fall, but you no longer curse the ground. You may still cry, but you no longer drown in sorrow. You may still lose, but you no longer lose yourself. You begin to see every experience as part of the unfolding whole. The mind may not understand, but the heart bows anyway. That bowing, that quiet, wordless yes, is the essence of enlightenment. When you live in surrender, gratitude becomes your natural state. You thank the dawn and the dusk, the laughter and the tears, the meetings and the farewells. You see beauty in imperfection, wisdom in uncertainty, and love in the ordinary. You stop waiting for something to happen and realize that everything is already happening. The need to chase, to fix, to regret, to fear, all fades like echoes in a dream. Only awareness remains, still, luminous and free. And so, the fifth secret to living without regret and fear is this: surrender to the nature of reality. Stop trying to be the author of the story and become the witness of the unfolding. Stop asking life to conform to your desires and start aligning your heart with its truth. When you surrender completely, the distinction between you and life disappears. There is only life living itself through you. In that realization, all regret ends, all fear dissolves, and peace, which was never absent, reveals itself as your true nature. If these words have awakened something within you, if you feel the quiet call to live more deeply, more freely, and more in tune with the rhythm of existence, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Join us in this journey of awakening, where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets the modern heart, guiding us all towards surrender, serenity, and the boundless peace that arises when we finally stop resisting what is.